Hey everybody, it's Robyn and welcome to my channel. Today on the Robyn's Nest, I wanted to try out the creative new cake top forward style of cake for all of you. Now, most of the ones I've seen so far are so beautiful. They're really artistic and classy, but I wanted to try something new. So today we're going with something really fun and a little bit silly too. So I'm going to be making this mostly buttercream version of Hello Kitty for all of you. And fun fact, guys, I bet you didn't know, her real name is Kitty White, and she made her first appearance in the 1970s. I know, right? I had no clue. I thought that was really cool. So I guess every day you learn something new. But one thing I do know is I can't wait to make this cake for all of you. So let's get into it. So most of the cake top forward style cakes I've seen so far aren't very thick, so we're only going to be using 2 layers of cake for this today, and I'm using my delicious marble recipe. And once we've leveled off our layers, then we can go ahead and fill that layer with some buttercream. And I'm using some white American buttercream, which I've colored with some white food color, also known as titanium dioxide. So once we've filled that layer, we need to cut our cake into the shape that we need, because Hello Kitty's head isn't a perfect circle, it's more of an oval. So we're going to get those trimmings cut off before starting our crumb coat. And for our crumb coat, we're just going to be using that same white American buttercream. So we're going to take a small offset spatula, and you guys can actually use whatever tool you prefer. This is just what works best for me. And we're going to add a nice thin coat all over our entire cake before popping it into the fridge to chill for a little bit. And you don't have to leave it in there too long, you just want it to firm up a bit, so about 10 or 15 minutes should do. So now that our cake has been chilled and our buttercream is set, it's time to add a thicker, more generous layer right on top of that. And I'm going to use a piping bag to apply my buttercream so I get a nice thick coat with very little mess. Now once I finish applying my buttercream, I'm going to switch back over to my favorite tool, my small offset spatula, and we are going to give this a quick once over to smooth everything out before switching over to a bench scraper to get it extra smooth. And you want to make sure you get this really good because this is your final coat before we pop it into the fridge to get extra firm. And you want it to get nice and hard, so we're going to put it on the coldest setting for a good 30 to 40 minutes so it'll be nice and easy to handle when we flip it. So as you guys can see, I laid my cake onto a piece of parchment, so it would be easier for me to transfer the cake when it's time to stand it upright. Now, another thing you'll notice is that my cake is sliding around all over the place because I forgot to add a little dab of buttercream in between the parchment and the cake board, making what should have been an easy job somewhat difficult. So don't be like Robyn, learn from my mistakes, add that dab of buttercream. Alright, so with that said, we've flipped our cake and frosted it, and now we're using our bench scraper to finish off the smoothing. Now once we have it looking the way we want, we're going to pop it back into the fridge to firm up completely so it's ready for handling. So once our cake has had lots of time to firm up, it's time to stand our cake top side forward. But before we do, we need to cut the bottom so it will actually stand. And it's very important to make sure this is very straight, or else your cake is going to lean when you try to make it stand. And now, like every other cake I ever make, we're going to attach it to our cake board with a little bit of buttercream. And I'm actually going to use my parchment paper to help me pick this up and eliminate some of the fingerprints that may potentially form. And if you do mess anything up, you're just going to take a smoothing tool and go over it very carefully. So for this next part, it's actually really important that your buttercream is completely firm. So if your cake has thawed out any while you're handling it, it's important to pop it back into the fridge for a few minutes and allow that buttercream to harden, because we're going to lay a stencil on the front of the cake so we can mark off where her face is going to go. And you don't want that piece of paper sticking to your buttercream, which it will do if it started to thaw out any. And I'm just going to give these lines a quick once over so you guys can see them a little bit better before I start to pipe on her ears. So for this part, we are not going to use a piping tip. I'm just going to use a piping bag with the tip cut off, and we're just going to pipe on some very simple little pyramids of buttercream. And you're going to want to make sure to pipe these up a little bit bigger than you think you'll need, because as we smooth these, we're going to be removing a little bit of frosting. So don't be afraid to pipe on too much buttercream. And this part does not have to look pretty. You're going to want to put your main focus on the placement of the ears and making sure you have enough buttercream. So pipe lots on, like I said, and then we can get to smoothing. So for this part, I'm going to be using a small flexible plastic smoother, and we're just going to trust the process and keep going over it until they look as they should be. Now, to save yourself a little bit of time, you could go ahead and make the ears out of fondant, but I really don't feel like it has the same effect because look at those guys. Aren't they adorable? I just love them. What do you guys think? Because personally, I think you cannot beat the buttercream. It just looks too neat and clean. So for this next part, to save a little bit of time, once again, you guys can choose to make it out of fondant, but I want to use as little fondant as possible on this cake, so we're making the bow out of buttercream. So I'm just using a piping bag with no piping tip. I just cut the tip off, and we're just going to carefully pipe on a little triangle on each side, then a circle in the center, and then I'm going to use a tiny little smoother to finish it all off and make it look nice and neat. And for anybody who is curious about my smoother, this one is just homemade from a flexible cutting board, but you can also buy something similar called a flexi smoother, or you can also use a piece of cardstock or a piece of acetate. All of those options work really well, but I like mine the best because they're so customizable when they're homemade. Alright, so we are almost done our cake top forward Hello Kitty cake. We just need to add her face. So for this part, I am going to use a little bit of fondant because I want it to look perfect. And for her whiskers, I'm really not sure buttercream would even work. I think if we tried to pipe that on, it might not even stay on the cake. So I think fondant is really the way to go just for this part of the cake. So we're just going to go ahead and finish sticking on all of her cute little whiskers and getting those into place. And then I'm going to show you guys how I cut the cake. Now, having never made a cake like this before, I've also never cut one either. So I have to say, I was a little bit nervous. I wasn't quite sure how it was going to work out. I was scared everything was going to fall apart and I was going to ruin the cake. But it actually worked out, and you guys will see in just a second. But doesn't she look adorable, guys? I absolutely love this cake. I am so in love with the cake top forward style, and I really want to try it again. But you guys let me know, who do you think I should make? You guys have the best ideas, so hit me up in that comment section down below. Well, that's it for today, guys. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And thanks for watching. Hope you loved my Hello Kitty.